Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and 2021 saw more Marvel content and superhero content as a whole than we've ever seen before. Despite that, the fans' response to this plethora of content has been middling to bad at best. There's just been a lot of criticism labeled at it where it's uninspired, politically motivated, and just overall bad storytelling written by incompetent writers with zero experience in some cases. And it's interesting to see that the one standout in this entire year was Spider-Man No Way Home, which had very little to no Disney influence. So you can kind of see where the problem therein lies. Sony seems to at least care about fans to a further degree than the rest of the studios do, with one or two examples of Spider-Man and Ghostbusters Afterlife. They've been really outshining all the other studios as a positive influence on the entertainment industry. But the biggest standout of all the Marvel content that we've seen was Loki, in a negative sense at least. A biggest standout in destruction of a beloved character and destruction of the very world itself. Loki saw the show's lead get debased and demoralized from the devilish, charismatic villain that he was, and complicated character, to being a whiny bitch who's like, oh no, don't hurt anyone, oh! One day, he saw a clip of him die, and he went from fighting Thor 1v1, standing his ground pretty well, taking hits from the fucking Hulk, and killing 82 people in 3 days, or whatever the quote is, to, we can't hurt them, that's bad, let's get out of this fight, and gets thrown off a train by two normal humans. But he can fight Thor and the Hulk. Just overall, I was not a fan of that show. I have some very strong feelings about it, but one of the worst things it did, apart from its destruction of its lead character, was the introduction of Kang the Conqueror and his manipulation of the multiverse, and just the mere mechanics and intelligent writing. The mechanics of the universe were utterly debased and destroyed by Kang's involvement into it, making it that there's no free will. Iron Man didn't snap because he wanted to. He snapped because Kang told him to. And it just did tons of damage to the lore and damage to the upcoming properties where multiverse is included. It's saying, oh, so they must take place after the events of Loki, but Endgame couldn't have taken place during or before the events of Loki because there were no other timelines. It was just nonsense. A ton of unmitigated disaster of nonsense. And one thing that No Way Home had, some Marvel stands had an issue with, is it didn't acknowledge the Loki lore, the Loki choices that were made to affect this universe. And that's why in such a small TV show, you shouldn't have such universe-defying repercussions without at least communicating. And that seems to be the problem here, where a No Way Home writer speaks about this issue. Let's take a look. So, Spider-Man No Way Home writers were unsure how film's ending lined up with Loki's finale, revealing apparent lack of communication across Marvel. And that is just terrible to see. Marvel used to be known for incredible communication between the movies, setting each other up, and just really well thought out timeline of events between the movies. And now it's just like, the writers saw the Loki finale when we did, and they're just like, oh, does that affect our movie? That's just really bad, especially with something with such devastating consequences to the very structure of the Marvel universe. No communication. And yeah, the things that were shown in Spider-Man directly contradict so much of what happened in Loki in that last episode, at least. So it's just really disheartening to see that this is the motivation behind all of that. So, recent interview, writers Chris McKenna and Eric Somers have revealed that despite their film's purported dedication to being interconnected, communication between Marvel's various productions appears to be virtually non-existent. And yeah, that's just awful. This apparent weakness in Marvel's grand strategy was touched upon by the pair during a recent interview with The Wrap. Asked by the site's reporters how Marvel's schedule shuffle in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic affected their conclusion to the first MCU Spider-Man trilogy, McKenna recalled, when we started breaking the story and even started writing the script, we followed Doctor Strange 2 in the timeline. Yeah, it definitely seems like that one's going to be very interconnected and might have a little bit more communication between the projects. So then during pre-production, things got pushed and changed, he explained. We were supposed to start filming in July. Yeah, just going into how their schedules changed, not really relevant. Originally, we were writing this where Strange was going to be involved, but it was after the events of Doctor Strange 2, so where he is in his head, and that's something that we were kicking around. Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware that Spider-Man was originally going to come out after Doctor Strange 2, which is really weird considering how much it sets up Doctor Strange 2, so I'd be interested to see how Sam Raimi was able to fix that issue. And then it seems more and more like, oh, this actually gets him interested in pursuing a multiverse as a concept. Okay, not really any issue with that there. Bounding in the comments, well, your ads are getting ridiculous. It is in discussion of the subject that Marvel's apparent lack of inter-production communication makes itself known. And they were asked whether the multiverse cracking finale had a relation to the conclusion of the first season of Disney Plus's Loki, which saw reality rewrite itself in the wake of Sylvie's stabbing of He Who Remains. Somers professed we were actually down this road when that Loki finale happened. So yeah, it definitely seems like they watched it live with us and were just as surprised. And further indication of Marvel's lack of planning, Somers added, we all felt like this really helps. This is great because it shows that there is trouble in the multiverse. All right, that shows a little bit of a misunderstanding of the events of Loki and the repercussions of it from a technical and world-building aspect to it. It said that there was no such thing as the multiverse before Sylvie stabbed him. So this film must take place after the events of Loki, even though Loki's events happened at all time always, because the place at the end of the universe it affects the entire universe simultaneously. So is this in the old universe or the new universe, or how would the existence of a multiverse affect the timeline of events that happened in the main MCU universe after those events? It just complicates it, and they're never going to address it. So this shows a bit of a misunderstanding of what happened in this finale. Whether certain things that were happening in Loki lined up in terms of timeline exploding at the exact same time that Doctor Strange is casting the spell, I don't know, he admitted. And I hated Loki with a burning passion, but I think it would have helped Spider-Man a little bit if they would have lined up those events like they're talking about, because it does do some damage to Doctor Strange. That's one of my biggest problems with No Way Home, is it brings Doctor Strange down a few pegs on his importance, on his knowledge. He makes a lot of dumb decisions, like this potentially universe-shattering spell that he's going to do with Peter, and he doesn't even like sit down with him and say, hey, do you want these people to remember? Hey, this can be bad, don't change it during the events. He has no sit down with him to go over these events, and then he just lets those changes be made. It was just really disingenuous to see the very intelligent Doctor Strange make so many dumb decisions, and I think it would have helped if there was an outside factor that he would have had no way of knowing would affect his spell be what caused the cracks in the multiverse. So let's say if somehow it was lined up to exactly when Sylvie stabbed, even though that doesn't make it helps a little bit, or just some exterior force that made his spell go wrong versus him just not communicating and making some dumb decisions. Like, the multiverse is fragile right now and there's no way he could have known that. Just something like that would have really gone a long way in keeping his character intact through the events of No Way Home. See if it goes any more. Alright, that seems to be all that they have. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's really sad to see the juggernaut that was Marvel with their incredibly interconnected universe fall apart so thoroughly and be dissected to this degree where nothing's interconnected. It's just like, oh, multiverse. But you're not even keeping your multiverse mechanics consistent throughout your properties. And I love No Way Home, but I think it should just be kind of a standalone and not be compared to the other dog shit that has been the rest of Marvel's Phase 4. So overall, just interesting to see how they're falling apart at the very seams, not communicating like they used to, and not even remotely thinking through the consequences of their actions in the writer's room. But that's all I have for today. If you would please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Anon. If you you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.